It's a sunny morning. Welcome, gentlemen.
How you guys feeling after last night's hang?
Yes, Brad.
I feel good.
No problem getting up this morning.
It's Friday morning. I never have a good.
We all went and hung out with Mike, which is yet to come on our podcast.
Yeah, our other agency friend.
Yeah, at a local vineyard here outside of Nashville. Had a good time. Smoked some cigars. And
if you don't know about the beauty of Franklin and Nashville, it's an ugly place. Don't come.
Yeah, don't come.
Don't come. The sunsets are horrible.
Yeah, the sunsets are horrible. There's no rolling fields where you sit on vine wrapped hills smoking cigars and drinking wine. That doesn't exist here.
Doesn't. You're talking about California.
Yes.
Yeah, it does
go
go
there.
California. Yeah.
Anyway, fun topic this morning, today, whenever you're listening to this. We hear from listeners, friends, colleagues in our own agencies. The discussion is always comes up, price. How do you price? What do we price? How do we price this? What's your pricing model? Do you discount? And so let's talk about that today.
Yeah. Do you discount?
Do I discount? It's a strategy. It's a strategy that can be used. I think there's a lot of ways to unpack this, but I think first, before we get into discounting, let's just talk about pricing. Have you guys seen your pricing for your services, for what you do, for what you sell, change at all in the past year because of COVID? We've talked a lot about our businesses and how they've either thrived or been hurt, but has pricing changed for you at all?
I haven't seen pricing change much. We've had clients ask us to do different reductions based on different situations, but not overall. We haven't, like as an agency, repriced our services.
What we have done is we've tried to get more and more out of the box pricing going. So it's like, I think traditionally agencies are like, here's approximately what it's going to take to do this thing, or, they may be hours, it may be other drivers. They may bill the hours that they, whatever, it's usually variable is the point. And what we've been working a lot towards, and even more so now, is having kind of consistent pricing for a scoped product type thing. That's just been the journey that we're on. So we had opportunity to do that more through COVID. I wouldn't say, I don't think we got asked to do things cheaper than we normally would or anything like that. That all seemed to be the same. What about you?
I haven't, but what we have seen is the ability during COVID to develop some of these things, as you talked about. We don't have it at 5x5 a lot of, quote, out of the box things, because every client is kind of unique and different. And but what we have been able to do is to develop things like strategy sessions, assessments, audits, those things that you can kind of put some parameters that said these run for the most part this price. And depending on how many people you have involved in the length of strategy session, it may be a little more, a little less. But I think it has been a good time to develop those things, and also use them as ways to get people in the door and to ease them into maybe where pre-COVID, a lot of companies were like, we got this big budget, let's put together a plan and a strategy and execute it. Now people might be a little more cautious and say, before I drop this X amount of dollars, we might want to hold some of that back, et cetera. But maybe an easy way to get them in the door and to start working with them is in some of these smaller, I don't even want to call them smaller, but more out of the box, like you said.
Yeah. I think when you can do that, sometimes I think a lot of people, you think about when you buy something, and we have to remember, human beings on the other side of these, even if it's a company that's paying for it, I do think it changes the dynamic a little bit, but still human. But if we all buy something, the clearer it is, the easier it is to make the decision, right? And in e-commerce, which is what we do, that's what, we see that playing out in consumers. So we're always trying to figure out, okay, so how do we make it as simple as possible? to palate, to understand, to make it, to say yes.
Right. An easy yes.
An easy yes. Not a healthy yes, but
to me, this all goes down to: are you the cheapest? Are you the best? Or are you the only? Because what I found, and I've found throughout my whole career, is that if you're selling in your business, like we all probably sell commodity services, and then we also sell things that are very unique to our own agencies. But if you're selling the commodity side of your services that can be easily price checked, then that's where you'll find some your clients or even new clients will challenge those things because they can easily price check. They can easily see the value. Maybe they've worked with other agencies where they've done that kind of commodity work, and so that's where the differentiators of your agencies really stand out. Because when you can't get price checked, or if you have a silver bullet that no one else can sell, you can charge what you feel is necessary for your business. Anyways, those are some of the things that we've unpacked before in the past.
Yeah.
But I find that I've been told by different clients that and this is really challenging, is that, oh, you guys are good price. And then I've heard from other clients, oh man, you guys are expensive.
Yeah.
And yet it's the same pricing model. And the challenge with that is that it's all point of view from your client. So if your client isn't used to working with an agency, or they're used to working with let's say a freelance contractor, well, of course they're going to pay less fees with a freelance contractor than you are with an agency that has a little more of an overhead, but you're going to probably get a lot more bang for your buck with an agency. You're going to have a lot more resources, a lot more expertise that are part of the team. And so sometimes you have to understand what they're comparing. If you do get that, like, oh, you're expensive, you have to understand their lens and then don't just rush out and go, man, our clients think we're expensive. Are we overcharging? Totally. Like you have to look at, and I'm not saying as an agency, you shouldn't always look at you should be fair, because otherwise, you might lose clients because you are too expensive. And you have to look at, what is our business model as far as our profitability, and what does our pricing look like? And can we reduce price? And what does that look like for us? Where's the win-win out of that? For instance, are we able to reduce price if we're able to get a long-term commitment from a client? Things like that, as a retainer model or other type of models that you might build into your pricing.
There's a lot of like psychological things that kind of are implications of how you price, which is kind of what the impetus for this conversation was, right? Because, if you discount yourself, then there's implications on the relationship side, potentially positive and negative. If you're too expensive, there's implications. If you're too cheap, there's implications. But from one direction, I think you're right. Like, we have been told we're really expensive, and we've been told we're really inexpensive, and both of those are, maybe not in those exact words, but you have to be confident for your type of consumer, for whoever your customer is. I think it's important to be an extreme value, because then you have stickiness, right? And value doesn't mean cheap. It just means the result, like, typically far outweighs the cost. And hopefully the cost is great for you, right? You need to profit and do all that kind of stuff and get paid well for the expertise that you truly do bring. But also, the thing that you do hopefully has 10 times the value. So then it's like a no-brainer.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, I think once you start working with a client, try to make sure that you understand the return on investment that you're giving back to your clients, because then you always have a strong argument of they're not going to leave you if you're making them 10x, right? Mm-hmm. They're not, and they're just not. If you're making them money and it's outweighing the cost of your bills that you're sending to your clients, they're not going to call you expensive. They're going to call you awesome. And so I think that's the key, is that you have to judge that with every client. And if you feel like that's not happening, and you kind of sense from a client that, man, these are bills that I'm paying and I just don't see much results, you better start thinking about how you could change that, because as an agency, that's your goal anyways.
Right.
Or make them aware of it, because a lot of times, people are doing a lot of different things. And so when something's rolling along and it's doing well,
Yeah.
it can be easy to just forget about, kind of just take it for granted. And I think sometimes that has to be the case.
I had a meeting last week with a client, and they have a new consumer product, and we started running ads. And the ads are getting a pretty high cost of acquisition, a lot higher than what we would like it to be, over double, almost to the point where it's not worth the actual cost of acquisition. They're losing money on every product they're selling. However, if you look deeper into the story, you'll find that, man, there's thousands and thousands of people that are becoming aware of your product and actually engaging with your product, even though they're not buying right now, because the buying cycle isn't 2 or 3 days or 4 days. It could be 6 months before they actually pull the trigger. And so if you build a story around that to the point where you're like, hey, you're getting, X, Y, and Z for your money. You might not be seeing the actual money back in your pocket right now, but what you're doing is you're preparing for a longer haul, and you're actually getting really good value. And so if you look deep into the story and you build the narrative, then you can communicate that to your client and let them do what they want to do with that, because then, and it's not always positive. I mean, it's positive, negative. As long as you're truthful about that story, that and the results, you can sometimes, like our client was pleased with it. Even though initially I'm like, we're just not getting what we'd like to go. I know they're losing money on every sale right now, but that will change.
What you said drives me nuts, because this is a tangent, right? But again, we have gotten conditioned to this idea that you put money into the internet slot machine and you put $1 in and instantly you make $2 back. But business isn't like that. You have to, it used to be that most people knew that, hey, in business, and generally you're going to lose money for a few years before you start making money, right? It's an investment to start it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be, hopefully it's not like, it's great when you can do it from day one, but running, the idea that, hey, we're running ads, we're not yet making money on every product. That's kind of normal, right?
Well, it's the attention economy. That's something that, heard that term thrown around. And I think that when setting prices, like you were saying, Brad, I think it's really, really important that not only does the client have a clear vision, but also as agency owners, as solopreneurs, we have a very clear understanding between us and the client of how the client defines success.
Yes.
Right? Because the problem that I see with agencies, with creative people, with marketing people, is we come at it from a very different approach many times than the client. And we have to adjust our trajectory to meet the client's trajectory and hopefully agree at that point. And if you don't start there, I think that's where you get yourself in trouble. It's where the client thinks they're paying for something that they're not getting. And like you said, Brad, I think it's really, really important to have a very clear formula, explanation, a strategy of, hey, Mr. Client, you didn't get the 3x return that you wanted this quarter. It was only 1.5. But strategically, remember when we said, this is how much market share is worth to you. This is how much new building your list. This is how much building a strong drip campaign over the next 6 months is worth. Lifetime value of your customer. And if you can have those nailed down for each client, then you're in the seat of being the expert, right? These are things that they can't do or don't understand completely how to do and have never thought through on their side. And they're coming to you and say, this is the expert level of thinking that I need. And if you don't have that, then that's when you get in trouble, because you're like, well, what do you mean? What do you mean? Yeah, but we look at all these impressions we got, and look how much we built your email list.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Those days are gone.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to sit across from the CEO, the CFO, whoever it is, and say, this is how much it's worth to you financially. This is the lifetime value of this list to you. So that's just a side note, but I think that's how we're more and more thinking strategically on that level, because it positions you as the only in the game. So
I think that insight of getting an idea of what a win looks like from a client is it seems so simple, but I know for the longest time, we didn't directly ask that. Now we do, or we try to. But you just directly ask that. It's like, if you looked back at the end of this project, what would it have looked like if it was a massive win for you? And then they can tell you, like, they may say something that is impossible, like, then you can address it, or they may not, but at least you hear, and it's almost like an agreement. Like, we've kind of agreed that this is the thing. So if we hit that thing, obviously there's other things that are important as well, but if we hit that thing, then everyone's happy. That's really valuable when you have that clarity.
And that allows you to start, okay, how are we going to price this project? That I would ask that. Don't agree on your contract and then have that discussion. Have that discussion like the within the first hour of talking to this client about it. Like, what is your definition of success? And then go back with your team or whoever and say, okay, this is our goal. This we have to hit. How much do we need to charge to get there?
Because typically you're talking about if you're aside from that particular question, you're talking about what are you doing?
Right.
And really you need to know, where do we need to be? Like, if we know where we need to be on the map, we can kind of adjust what we're doing and also say as if it aligns. But what's funny is, like, most of those conversations are, oh, I need this executed, or I need this done, or I need a website or whatever. And
ongoing support.
And you start talking about that thing. It's like talking about, all the turns you're going to make in a trip, rather than talking about where you need to be. And, that can cannibalize the entire conversation. And you're right. Like, sometimes they don't align. But it's not enough, I find, to ask what's your goal with this project, because that's people I find don't translate that well. When you can say, like, what is, if you looked back at the end of this thing, and it was a massive win, what would have had to happen for it to get there? Like, what would that look like?
And the thing that I find why that question is so important is, usually what I get is the potential client, stopping for a second and thinking.
Because they've never thought about it.
Exactly. And they're like, oh, that's a really great question. And that in itself shows you how important that is. And I've made the mistake in my career, I'm sure you guys can echo this, is you put together something, you have a conversation and you execute, and you come to the end of the first, second, third month, and they're like, and you're going, wow, what a great success, and they're like, oh, what a great failure. It's because we never had that discussion, because the whole time their definition of success, they were going in a different direction altogether. I thought we were going to get 10,000 customers, and you're like, you got 1,000 new customers in a quarter. That's huge win. Or they were like, oh, but nobody knows about us. No, we didn't make the list of the top 10 companies in our niche. I thought this would get us great brand awareness. Oh, right. Well, we never talked about that. So
it's talking about the result of the thing you're actually going to do, when most of the time you're talking about the thing.
Right.
It's like, people are saying, hey, we need a new website or something like that, or we need to execute this ad campaign.
When
we could do that.
When all they needed was a landing page, they didn't need a website.
We could do that, but then no one talks. It's harder and easier to just naively not talk about the result. And you're right. Most people haven't thought about it. Like, we all do that. I do that now. Like, when I go and I want to buy, whatever, I want to rebuild something in my backyard, and I hire someone to do that. Like, need a deck, or whatever. I build you a deck, and then I'm like, oh, this is not the deck I wanted, or this is not the result I was looking for. Is whatever. It's like in the sun. It doesn't have privacy, like that kind. Oh, well, I didn't know those things.
Do you guys? Let's say you guys are pricing out a project, and you guys are, creating a SOW. Do you guys price
statement of work?
Yeah, statement of work. Do you
You're
guys?
the first person that has ever that I've ever heard call it that, but I actually assume that that's the right way to call it, because you say it.
A SOW?
Yeah.
Yeah, statement of work. Sorry. Do you guys price
Brad loves acronyms.
Yeah.
Isn't that also like a female pig or something like that?
It is, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Southern
barbecue.
There you go. Yeah. LOL.
Laughing out loud.
Yeah.
That's good.
Do you guys price in the time it takes you to estimate the projects? And is that part of in the SOW building? Is that part of the pricing? model. And if your clients knew that, if they don't know that or whatever, they don't know that, is that a standard practice?
We don't really, we track it. We track that time, but we don't typically build that in. I do think that it should be built in.
Yeah.
I think it's just hard in practice to make it, build it in correctly. But the way we try and combat that is we try not to spend a ton of time on those. They're very slim. And I think we talked about in another episode, like we started doing these roadmap projects, that are relatively low cost, like pretty low cost actually, but it's where we just say, hey, it's basically like a deep proposal type project where we'll go in and figure out all the things that you need to do. And, if you want to, you can do that with us and we can apply that amount to what we do. If not, you can take it and use it as your game plan because it's got all of our expertise in it. And so that's how we've done it. We've tried to like keep all of those initial things to a very kind of scoped, slim, expected effort, right? So it might be a small call and a little bit of time putting together what this might look like, but we won't go deep into those things unless we're getting paid for it.
Because you've probably all been there before. You are pitching a new client. They're a substantial, like let's say, organization or company. they're sometimes they don't have an RFP, request for a proposal, and sometimes sometimes they do. Or sometimes they do, and you spend all the time trying to work up budgets and quotes and some initial strategy, some level, a lot of time put in, and that looks like there's going to be a larger budget, and all of a sudden they're like, well, okay, yeah, we're going to go with you guys, but we're going to just test you with a small project, and the project itself is not even worth what the initial time was, and you don't know that they're really going to do the full scope of what they want to do with you. They're just kind of like, how it is. These clients all the time have such a strong urgency to do this massive project for a year, and then all of a sudden it just changes in a heartbeat, and now they have this another small emergency project they need done, and they're like, oh yeah, you guys do that stuff too. Here, start with this. We find that we've had that over my career. I probably have had that 5 times or 6 times, and you spend all that time, and then you find out you do the first project, and then they kind of disappear. They're like, oh, thank you. Yeah, we've changed our direction, and either they're not clear with you that they just didn't care for you, or they've actually just some customers, they just change on a dime because something changes internally, pivots, and you deal. I mean, honestly, this is agency exposed, so let's get real. But you deal with clients sometimes that are really their life is upside down.
And they're trying, and they jerk you along with it.
You're jerking you along with it, yeah. And so they're constantly like their world is upside down. Their leadership is changing left and right. New people are coming in. Direction is changing internally within a company. And what was the biggest thing in the world to have to get done now is completely been squashed. And you're part of that ride, and you've invested a lot of time and energy with these folks. What do you do? And so I'm curious on the pricing model, like you just talked about. Do you, would clients, and we don't do this, but would clients pay for that time if you were to express it in a way that there was value at some level and commitment?
I think so.
I feel like some clients would, but some clients be like, you're just giving me, they don't understand the level of time it takes to do some of the stuff. So they're like, don't you just already have that someplace in a model that you just like put in a spreadsheet and click a button and you spit it out?
I find when people are like, some people do say that those kind of things. And I think generally those are the type of personalities that probably wouldn't want to work with.
Yeah.
Because if they challenge you to that level and, that early in the relationship, I think it, to me, indicates that this might be a relationship that is imbalanced the whole time where our position and our expertise that we have in this area may not be respected, which I think is more than, it has nothing to do with ego. I think it has all to do with, if the relationship's imbalanced, I think it's going to be a difficult one for you. At least that's what I found. I find that like I do think it has to be communicated in a certain way, at least what with us, meaning like I think people will pay for that, but I don't think you can communicate it as we're not we don't do anything for free, so you pay for that thing. You can snap your finger and shake your head, and people don't feel good about that. But but the truth is there's value in it, right? And if you do it, you're applying your time, which you should be paid for, I believe, and you're actually contributing value. And if you're contributing value, I think it's important to be paid for that as well. And so I think thinking for just a couple minutes on, which is not easy immediately, but like thinking about the value, like what is this thing? It's really not, some may call it a proposal, some may call it like a project strategy plan, or, and I think that those things take time and effort if they're going to be high quality. And I think you do get what you pay for with those type of things a lot of times. And so I think if you can communicate it as something that has value, and then I think there's a benefit there. And I found that people will pay for it that way. We all know as marketers, I think there's also a strategic thing, which is, if people have to put some skin in the game, which I think is important in our area, because it's easy to get jerked around and your time wasted. And I think it's really easy to kind of go along with, and people kind of, companies, and maybe even not even doing this on purpose, but they'll waste a lot of people's time. And so I think it's important to protect that. One way to do that, I believe, is by getting them to put some skin in the game. Sure, we'll do this. It doesn't have to be a lot, but just a little bit of, their time and attention is one element of skin in the game, meaning like, for instance, someone might be like, hey, I want to do this big thing. And you're like, have you thought about it a little bit? No, can we get on the call and talk about it? Like, well, if you don't care enough to talk about it, you're probably not going to care about my time to talk about it, even though you're saying that it's, this really cool thing. I think if you are not willing to apply your effort into it and focus for just a period of time to think through some of the important things I think that you need to think through, you're probably not going to, value my time either. So that's one element. But the second element is money. I think that, we know that once someone starts to apply funds to something, it's harder to back out, and it also makes the whole thing more serious. And so I think it acts as a natural filter. And you don't have to, it doesn't have to be an additional cost. Like, I think even if it's really small, it's effective. But I think you can apply that to the project. If they choose to go with you, or all those kind of things. But those are some of our experiences.
Yeah, I like the idea of applying it to a project so that there is that commitment. And again, if they decide to bail,
they're no
out
worse
or
off.
something,
They're no worse off.
Yeah, and apply to the project.
Do you guys have an hourly rate that's kind of like your standard agency hourly rate that you determined your retainers by?
Yes.
Okay.
That actually goes. I mean, we should share it, but it actually goes to the question of do you price based on hours or value or results, or how are you guys?
Yeah, we price on hours, and we do different things. We have if it's a long-term project, then it's Manmonth hours. If it's a short-term project, then it's actual trying to match out to our hours. And
so Manmonth hours, what you mean is it's like a monthly fee.
Well, a Manmonth hour is like how many actual people will be working on this. Like, for instance, if Bob is working on a project or you're working on a project, how much of your time for that month is going to be dedicated? If it's 50%, then we average 50% of a person working on it. And let's say you have 4 people working on a project for 4 months, and not all of your time is on it. We do Manmonth. So maybe 2 people work on it part-time, 50% of their time is one Manmonth, because, so, and you just, and based on hourly rate of those individuals and their expertise. So it depends on the long-term or short-term project. And we also do some interesting things that we found is really helpful, is that sometimes we do technology work that in developing software and other things that we just is brand new. We've never really, we don't really know 100% what it's going to take. We are fairly close. And so what we'll do sometimes is we actually give especially clients that we have relationships with, we give ranges.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is just a scenario. It could be, we might say, hey, that we've done it. This is what the price is. It's between $8,000 and $10,000. It's somewhere in between there, depending on if we have to go, over. And what we found is that if we track the hours, we're typically in there someplace, and the clients are happy because they have already budgeted $10,000, but they get a bill for $8,200. So they're like, okay, this is cool, this is fair. And another thing that we've done, which has been really cool, is we've really, for our clients, have built trust, because there's times where we're under, and sometimes even significantly under. We were able to somehow forgo something that we didn't thought we needed initially, and the price came, and instead of charging them what we initially estimated, we actually charge them even less. So it's like going to get your car fixed, and they're like, it's going to be $900. You're like, man, $900. And they come back and go, hey, we actually did it for $450. You're like, whew, thank you, man. I'm coming back, right? You're transparent with me. You could have charged me $900 because that's what you originally told me it was going to cost. And so it's being transparent with your customers. And, when there's times when things cost more, you can actually ask for it. Down the road. If you get stuck where you're like, man, this is costing us way more time than we imagined, it's an easy conversation, because the project before you went under, by 10% and gave your client the discount.
And I want to point on something that you're talking about there, because I don't want it to be misconstrued. Like, I think what you're talking about is that builds trust.
Correct.
Which is what's really valuable.
Correct.
It has nothing to do with the money, because most of the time like a company doesn't really care if it's like $450 or $900. Truthfully, like sometimes they care because it has to fit in their budget or the kinds of things. But like, unless we're talking about bigger numbers, I think the frugalness of a few $100s, it doesn't matter as much. But I do think trust is very important.
Yes.
Obviously, clearly, we all know trust is very important. That's what you're building there.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. We've done ranges like that as well. And I would say, I'm a big proponent of, I think you build a minimum up front, or at least in the, you might do it monthly, or we do it kind of equally, but
I think every
I wouldn't wait
agency
till
has
the
to
end.
have their minimum, right? Like, you don't take clients that someone says, hey, I have $1,500. What can you do for me? You don't take those kind of clients. I mean,
I'm saying I wouldn't even wait to build it
it's
until
not
the
a good
end.
way of saying it, not that kind of client, but you have a minimum dollar amount that you can work with, right?
Yeah. I would say, so it's interesting. Like when we, I see projects in agencies kind of always fall into this kind of hourly rate thing. I think, the problem with billing on hours is, if you're trading time for money, that's like basically the worst trade you can do. That's what a lot of people would say that, right? Because time is finite, and it's the only thing that's truly finite, right? So, we obviously use hours to drive a lot of what we do, because there's no real other metric when you're talking about human resources that are applied to something, especially when it's an unknown, kind of unclear thing. But I'm working really hard to start to peel off the things that are predictable on our side, that create predictable results. Quote predictable results, like on the other side, right? I mean, meaning that we can control the outcome. You never can control the true result with anything, but and just billing those as flat fee. And we're testing those kind of things, and it's kind of scary for an agency or a service business to do that kind of stuff. But once you can start doing that, and you can start scaling it, and you can start detaching fees from direct hours, I actually think that you're in a much healthier, uncapped space. And so that's just an insight on some of the pricing, from my perspective as I look at it. I do think a lot of stuff is unknown. You have to have an hour meter, at least to fall back on.
Yeah. I mean, it to me, whether or not you charge for value, it still comes down to, whether or not you as a business made a profit. So you have to understand what your cost is, no matter what you do, and that has gone down to either man-month hours or hours. It has to go down to the cost of your resources.
That increases, the importance of it increases as you grow and the more staff you have.
Yeah,
if you're a 3-person agency, 4, even 5, 7-person agency, yes, you need to know where your money's going, but it's not a huge thing because you know exactly what's the overhead, what am I paying, what does everybody need in that small group of people. But when you get, higher than that, then you start thinking, okay, well, if I'm paying my creative director, this amount of salary, he's definitely making more than say, a client manager is making, and the digital marketing specialist is making more than the entry level creative guy. So how do you manage that, and then create an hourly rate to the client when all four of those people are going to be involved in this project at some level over the next X amount of time?
Yeah, I have certain models that I use, and these come from past years. I should probably get rid of them because it's a new era, but some degree, you've got to understand what your billable multiplier is to your talent. Mm-hmm. So if you have like the best billable in your is the mid-range employee, like a copywriter. You're right, not a creative director, but a copywriter or an digital art director or designer. You should always look at billing those guys 3x of what you pay them salary, right? That's where the money's made a lot of times in the agencies. The more leadership is actually maybe 2x. You can't charge because otherwise the fees would be way too high for their costs. So if you have a more of a leadership role, creative director or head digital, you're probably not going to bill them out 3 to 4x because you're going to be charging your clients $600 an hour for their time or something. So, but it's understanding what your multiplier is for the talent and where your profit center is and who really drives the boat of your business. In the end, I mean, let's face it. I mean, as our business, we're just a human resource business. Mm-hmm. All we sell is ones and zeros and pixels. I mean, honestly, mm-hmm. and ideas. And so in the end, we're not building widgets for them. Even if it's a digital product, it's still based on human resources.
But in a service, human resource type world, in normal business models, or every business model out there, your goal is to increase your what you sell something for, to be underneath the value. So deliver more value, but still a reasonable amount of money, right? So that price point needs to be getting as much as you can while still delivering extreme value, I believe, on the product side. And then your goal is to decrease the costs of making that thing. Mm-hmm. So in agencies, the issue is detaching that one-to-one, I believe, of human resource hour to single client. I think because, if you sell just hours, which, by the way, we all do in some ways, but the issue is if you just sell hours, you can't reduce that cost anymore, right? You can't, because you're not going to reduce it by hiring or putting a lower level person on it.
Yes.
Right. So the only way you can truly reduce it, I think, at scale for a business model is to take less hours to accomplish the same type of thing. Yeah. And that is typically called innovation, right? Like in the world of business.
Well, for us, we don't sell hours. We don't say, hey, you're going to get 50 hours of our time for this project. We just give them a price, but we make sure internally it fits within our model of profitability.
So do you expose
based on hours
you expose
or man-month?
Oh, okay.
Sometimes we do. Depends on what they ask for as far as transparency of that. On a retainer specifically, we have retainers that are based on hours.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And they're basically, because we don't know what's to come in 6 months. Right. It's short-term strategies where month to month we decide what we're going to spend the time doing as part of an overall strategy. And so we just have a certain amount of hours. And if they want to buy more, they can, if we decide to do something that would take more time. But eventually that's how clients think that way.
Right.
They think hourly. So you have to communicate in a way. You either have to sell the value and they somewhere along the way, your client's going to think or know that somehow it's based on time.
No, I know. I think they think, I would tweak that. At least I'll pitch it at you. I think they think about time if they're not thinking about the clear end result.
So if you're delivering, let's say, an e-com platform for them, let's say you're building out an e-com store.
They get a widget.
They get
care
something
about
in
that
their
widget.
hand. It's like when I go buy a car, I don't think about how much man hours it took to actually build a thing. I'm just looking at the price compared to another car, right? Because it's a tangible thing. So I think when you're building a specific tangible thing, I think that pricing can be whatever you want, and they don't associate that with hours. But when you're looking at a big scope campaign where there's so many different things and moving parts and there's stuff, then they start looking at it from an hourly rate.
And I think harder to see the clear.
Yeah.
Well, it's a difference between delivering in our world a finished e-commerce website that is brand new. They didn't have it before, so
something shiny.
It might take a month. It might take 9 months. Whatever long it takes, you're working toward a goal, and at the end, they know exactly what they're getting. But if, like you said, if it's a bigger and the let's say the retainer is X amount of hours per month to grow traffic to our site. It's an SEO strategy. It's a paid ad strategy. It's a lead gen strategy. Then you start dealing with clicking back, not in a deliverable, but they're clicking back into an hourly thing going, okay, you've got 3 people working on this, and our email list is growing at a rate of X amount, or our traffic is increasing, or it's not increasing, or conversions are there, they're not there. Then they're like, what am I paying for? Why am I paying this amount of money for this many people when I'm only getting this result? So I guess it's really dependent on, is there an end big project that everyone's working on that we all know what the cost is, what the deliverable is, versus ongoing services and things that are changing and growing. And
I'm not saying that's bad.
Yeah.
Because I actually think in service business, you kind of have to have a good diversification between those two things. I'm just saying, I think there's a clear distinction between, and that anyone should be aware of, between selling time and selling the end a result.
Yes.
And when you can sell the result confidently, that probably has higher levels of scale attached to it.
Yeah. Again, we don't come to our clients and say, "Hey, it's going to take us 136.5 hours, and so at this much an hour, it comes to like that's not that's not what we do."
You didn't sit there with a calculator.
No, but internally we have to vet what is this really going to take?
Oh, of course.
And again, I just go to when
you can't just pick a number out of the sky.
Correct.
In fact, you should probably go top down, bottom up. What is this valued at? Like what is the result worth to them, and also what does it cost? What does it take to do?
If it's a 30-hour project, like let's say you look at it and you go, "This is I think going to take about 30 man hours." It's easy to estimate, but if it's 300 man hours, then all of a sudden there's room to make an error. So at that point, man, I start going into man-month hours, and what I calculate is that there's no human being that's going to work 100% of their time. Mm-hmm. Right. So you got to have some type of ratio. I calculate approximately 80%. So when an employee is not, if you're working full time for a client, you're not going to work 100%. You're going to be messing around, doing all this other stuff, right? You're going to be looking at your email, blah, blah, blah.
I know you block Facebook in your company and all the fun sites, but that's okay.
Yeah. No.
Just kidding.
So you just estimate like 80% of their time, right? The total hours. And then you have your multiplier on top of that. What's their multiplier, right? That you want to hit per employee.
Yeah.
You should know your multipliers. You should know how much,
you're paying them versus
how much you're going to make from them this year. And because that's all you have is human resources.
On average, I would say the business community accepts, I've always been taught 3 to 4 times, like a person's salary needs to bring in 3 to 4 times what it costs.
Because you have other employees that you don't bill, probably people that accounts payable, accounts receivable, finance, sales, things like that. That are just cost, and you have overhead, and so somebody's got to pay for that overhead. And so and this is the challenge, is when clients come in and go, "You know what? I'm used to paying a freelancer $50 an hour." And well, they don't have multipliers. Like they're one multiplier, and they don't have the overhead, and all of this, and they don't have the resources. They're one person.
And if it works for what you're doing, do it.
Yeah, then I would say knock yourself out. Go do that.
I mean, there's not a right one size fits all solution. It's just that fits a certain type of solution. Yeah. Agencies fit another type of solution. In-house people fit another type of solution.
Do you guys do you have clients that demand transparency?
Mm-mm.
We've had clients like that, and yeah, it can be interesting. I mean, there's no reason why you wouldn't be transparent, right? I
Correct.
mean, I think we're in a day and age where that, like you said, Ken, that's huge on trust. What we've done at 5x5 is built a dashboard that, and I've talked about this, and you guys might have it too, but at any given time in a project, a client has their own dashboard. They can see for that month where they are in spending. Like if it's a retainer, you've used this amount of hours at this rate. This is what the deliverables are. These are the projects that are outstanding. Here's where we are on those projects here in the process from a project management. So at any given time, there's complete transparency. So we're totally transparent on that side.
When I said, I would say, I think to that level, yeah, like project, awareness, transparency, all that kind of stuff, that's good. I think there's a transparency that I think is unhealthy when that pierces through the project into your business model.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, and I've never had anyone ask this, but I assumed you meant like transparency on like, tell me all your costs and what you're paying your employees, all the hourly rates.
Show me where all my money went.
I think that there is that level, in my opinion, is not anyone else's business but yours.
Like what you're saying, you're not saying show me where my money meant. What you're saying is them saying, well,
kind of meddling with your model.
What's your profit margin?
Yeah, meddling with that model, which I think is detrimental to you and them and everyone else that you work for if that happens. Because the judge should be, is it accomplishing what we agreed it would accomplish, and or what you're looking for, and if it does to some degree, like it doesn't matter. But I know it does matter to some people. But ultimately, like it doesn't matter if you accomplished what you accomplished and you did it and created a certain.
I've never had a client say anything like that. Like, you charge me X amount per hour, and I know you only have 2 people working on it, and I know they can't be making more than this. So you're just ripping me off, because you got to be making 10 times as much. And I have never had anybody.
I've never had that either, but I think that here's a level of that though. So let's end with the question that I asked at the beginning, which is, do you discount? Because I think that discounting conversation does tend to get into that meddling with the model a little bit. It can.
Well, I think discounting can be.
Do you discount your hourly rate? Do you discount for people when they say, hey, can you show me a little love here?
Only when it's used to sell a project from a marketing perspective. So let me give you an example. If you hire us for 6 months, it's going to be this rate. But if you sign a year-long retainer, you're going to get a discount, right? Because that's the sales tactic, right? Yeah. Let's be honest. It is a better value, and they're going to pay less.
What's a give and take?
But for them, their risk is, I'm going to extend my risk out for 6 months, and for us, the risk is, are we going to be able to, keep enough people on this? Are we going to be able to keep this client happy past the 6 months? Are we going to be able to come up with enough creative marketing solutions if we don't use all our hours every month? There's risk and rewards on both sides.
Yes.
So in that case, and then the only other time we discount is with a nonprofit client. So we have a standard hourly rate, and then there's an hourly rate for nonprofit clients.
That's good.
That's good.
No, I mean, I think that's smart. I mean, so you don't have your initial price more to account for some
beaten up
discount negotiation,
getting beaten up. No, I mean, I think we try to get what our hourly rate is, and we'll make concessions at times. Another note that I found too is that especially with maybe some of your larger clients, if they're in corporate, they have set budgets per project. And so sometimes they're just trying to get in within a budget with a project. But if you look at their full total scope of project, I've had this a lot with different clients throughout the years. They said, can you give me a little break here? We'll take that break and add it to the next project and put it on top of that. And you can bill me additionally for what this, I want you to reduce that so that these invoices come in at this. It's kind of like them trying to save face internally. And I think if you work with your clients in that way and go, and I found that most clients are really true to that. They're like, we put an extra $5,000 in that project. more than what it probably you would have paid because you had the budget for that specific project, but you didn't have it for the other. We took it from the one, from A and put it on B, and kind of moving a little bit around the money a little bit. And a lot of times that works for them, and it works for us too. So there's always ways. I mean, I think it's one of those things. It's like, if you give your client a discount, don't sit there and communicate it all the time. Like, remember, we gave you that discount, but just make sure that it's a fair deal, that even in the conversation, you could have a conversation like, if it's a long-term client, somehow you want to get that back. Mm-hmm. Like if it's a discount where, you're like, I don't know. And it has to be a win-win.
I totally agree. I think that the ultimate thing that you want to protect is having a balanced relationship in the future. And so I think when someone beats you up and there's that gameplay of we charge more and then we discount a little bit and we give you a little up, I think that is detrimental to the relationship. But I think that fitting inside of budgets and helping to try and fit inside budgets and being creative with that for practical reasons actually shows trust.
We're all trained, right? So if you have a client that on every project beats you up, guess what you're going to do? The next time you give them an estimate, you're going to price 20% higher because you're going to get beat up. You're still going to get the money. You're still going to get the price you want eventually. But that's not a great relationship if every conversation about pricing is getting
because it's not just price; it happens everywhere.
To me, what that says is, number one, there's a lack of respect, but number two, they don't see you as high value.
No,
correct. It's like none of us go to Apple and say, "Hey, let's negotiate what that."
Yeah.
It's like we wait in line to pay premium price.
I did that one time. They just told me to go get the door. There's the door.
Yeah, exactly. But why do we not? What that says is we don't have enough trust in our own value that we're giving the client. That says, I'm sorry, this is our rate. We don't discount it, and if you don't want to work with us, that's fine. Yeah, but we're not going to enter into that kind of discussion.
Yeah, I just think discounting is if it's done the right way, you should do it. If for practical reasons, for instance, like you're trying something new and they know it and you're exploring something, hey, give them, hey, we've never done this thing before, so we're gonna, we'd like to learn it ourselves, and so we're gonna give it to you at cost or something like that. But when you get into that kind of knick-knack, psychological beat-up type thing, I think that always leads to a bad place.
I would just say have strong awareness, and I would want to end on this, is just have strong awareness of where you stand in your pricing overall.
Yes.
Just because one client says you're expensive, don't think that you're overpricing.
Right.
Kind of look at the whole landscape. And one of the things that we do is when we do RFPs or estimates when we're competing against other agencies, if we don't win, we'll ask, how are we priced compared to other agencies? And we normally get the response, you're middle of the road. You're right, right in the ballpark. I'm like, okay. So you start asking questions, you understand, are we appropriately priced for, are we overpricing? Is that not why we're getting these projects? And we've never not received a project because we were overpriced. Maybe you're not pricing it out enough. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But anyways, just have a good, clear understanding. Take different perspectives of different clients, not just one. And again, sometimes there's a lot of fun, creative things that you can do that is a win-win when you're pricing.
Good stuff, guys. Well, thank you so much. It's been a good conversation. As always, go and rank us on whatever platform that you follow us. Give us some ratings and reviews. And also,
smash up the likes.
Yeah, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel. So go
check out Brad's new glasses.
Yeah, we need. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, my hat. My hat's not new, but my glasses are. Yeah,
it's a motorcycle flag.
Get the YouTube channel, the algorithm all buzz.
Yeah.
Smash it up.
All right. Okay. Talk to you guys later.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.